You have your weapon out this time?
Yes, I did.
Why is that?
Just based on the threat that we had a suspect armed with a handgun. We don't know his intentions. We know that he's not acting in a normal manner, that somebody would be acting in Costco with a weapon. In case he comes out, we don't want to be reaching for our weapon in our holster. We want to be ready.
Now,
it does turn into a shooting situation.
In all fairness, you did not have an eyeball yourself on Mr. Scott at that point.
No, sir, I did not.
You're relying on the information that you're getting over dispatch, correct?
That's correct.
And so all your actions are based on what you're receiving over the radio.
That's correct. Suspect was doing inside the business. I was basically just keeping a visual, trying to keep a visual of inside the business and what was going on before we actually made a decision to make any type of entry or do anything at that time. We were going to wait for additional officers to get to the scene. We had K-9 units en route. We had the air unit en route, several supervisors.
As you're passing the rushers up to the front, do you see him stumble or fall into anything?
No, sir. At this time, she's got her arm around him, so I just walking together.
What happens?
So they're walking up front. I'm on the phone with dispatch. I tell dispatch they're about to exit the building, just giving her constant updates as far as we're going. She says there's going to be an officer right at the front, and I say I acknowledge I see him now. The officer up at the front, he's standing off to the side. Start walking on outside. I kind of wave my arm because I'm walking directly behind Mr. Scott and his girlfriend at the time. So I waved my hand in the air to sit there and say, this is the gentleman, for as far as things are going. So we're exiting the building, and then I tell the officer is still, I don't know if he didn't see me when I was walking behind him. So, because as soon as Mr. Scott.
When you say he, again, yes. When you say he, are you referring to the officer not seeing you?
Yes, sir.
Or Mr. Scott?
The officer, sir.
So you're not sure if the officer's seen you or not?
Correct.
So what happens next?
So we exit the building, and then the officer that's standing off onto the side, I say, this is the gentleman, as Eric's less than 2 feet in front of me. So I say, this is the gentleman. The officer says, okay, and he walks up behind Mr.
Also, you say he. Once again,
I'm sorry.
He being officer.
Yes, sir.
You can say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the officer says, okay. So the officer is less than about a foot to 2 feet in front of it or behind him. So he reaches out and says, excuse me, sir, to Mr. Scott, and then reaches on his right elbow. And when he did that, Mr. Scott, his arm just came back like this.
Do you recall if you ever placed your hands on him?
No, never.
Do you remember what the commands were that the officers gave?
I remember distinctly, drop the firearm. That's what I just keep on remembering is, sir, drop the firearm.
I tell the suspect, I said, show your hands, get down on the ground, get down on the ground.
Does he obey any of those commands?
No, he makes no attempt to comply whatsoever.
Where was Eric's hand when the officer said to drop the gun?
On the firearm.
And that would have been which hand?
The right hand.
And where was his left hand? That's my follow-up.
Kind of like this.
Spins around. Where are his hands?
His hands, he's not making any attempt to put his hands in the air. His hands are down by his side.
I just remember the one because that was shot in his lower pectoral, right pectoral. And that's when I specifically remember because that's when he dropped the firearm.
he separated or split off from the female, and he was walking really fast and had his hand on his firearm. And the dispatcher asked, he has his hand on the gun?
Yes, sir.
Describe that to us, please.
At that time, when he started walking, he just put his hand on the back of his pants and just kept on lifting up his pants.
And what did you think was going on with that?
I guess at that time, just pulling up his pants.
At any time, did Mr. Scott follow the commands of the officers?
No, sir.
At any time, did you see him make any gesture that would indicate that he was surrendering or perhaps disarming?
No, sir.
Isn't it possible that when he pulled that gun out, that he was handing it to the officers to give it over to them?
No, sir, because that's the thing that really sticks in my mind is the fact of the way he just kept tugging up on his firearm.
Why does that, sticking in your mind, the way he keeps tugging up on his firearm, make you believe that he was not disarming?
Because with disarming, usually if you have it like either clipped over or a Phobos holster or whatnot, it'll just unlatch.
With regards to when Mr. Scott was face-to-face with the police, where he had his conversation with police, did he ever, do you recall him ever saying anything to the police?
No, sir.
Do you ever recall him saying, I'm disarming?
No, sir.
I'm giving him the commands. He says, quote unquote, I have a gun.
Anything at all that you remember hearing?
No, sir.
There was a lot of people there.
Yes, sir.
Might he have said something you didn't hear?
No, sir.
I'm going to show you let me ask you this. The gun that fell to the ground, you said you saw it on the ground.
Yes, sir.
Describe that gun for us.
Black plat, looking at a 9mm, maybe SIG.
Was it in a holster?
No, sir.
You don't recall seeing it in a holster?
No, sir. It's not that he was asked to leave. We just told him that our policy is we cannot allow firearms in the building.
22, do you know why Costco doesn't post a sign, firearms prohibited?
No, sir. I just guess because it's private property. Like I said, we're a low-cost operator. We're not geared towards surveillance cameras as far as things go.
238, are you saying that Mr. Scott was shot repeatedly after he dropped his gun?
Shot a few more times, yes, sir, after he had the firearm down, yes, sir.
When the first officer confronted Eric and the first shot was fired?
How much? Less than a minute.
Was Eric posing any threat to you or anyone in Costco walking out of the store?
No, sir.
The decision is made to evacuate the business.
Who makes that decision?
That decision is made by both the business and by the watch commander at that particular time.
Are they hanging around or are they leaving?
No, they're leaving with a purpose.
What happens after that?
At that time, a employee flags me down. I'm only a couple of feet away, and he points to a subject who matches the description and says, quote unquote, that's him. At that point, I order the suspect to turn around. I do not remember exactly what I said to the suspect, but it was probably something along the lines, you in the gray shirt, turn around. And at that point, he turns around, he complies.
What was your backdrop when you fired, do you know?
An open parking lot.
Did you see other people behind Mr. Scott when you fired?
No.
How many people would you say were in that area?
Probably over 100. The gun, pulls it from his waistband, it begins to point towards my direction and break the plane. And at that point, fearing for my safety, fearing for the safety of all of the other officers on scene, and more importantly, fearing for the safety of the numerous citizens, including children that were in that area, I fired my weapon at center body mass in order to stop and incapacitate the suspect.